Okay, good evening and welcome to Just Daf It. Daf Yevamos here. We're learning Yevamos Daf Ayin Dalid. It's actually Friday's Daf. Tonight is Motzei Shabbos. Of course, I'm wearing Motzei Shabbos gear, polo Ralph Lauren t-shirt, patriotic for United States of America. My nationality, I have two nationalities, Israeli and American, but at the end of the day is that I identify more with America than Israel. National, still an Israeli citizen, but most things American products, what I like, hence Ralph Lauren. I like the goods they make in America, just far superior than Israel. My father did ask me where I'd rather live. I do live in Israel, but I live in Israel or America. Where is it better to live? I said it's better to live in Israel, actually. I had to choose one. I am choosing. I am living in Israel for three reasons. One, the weather's better here, especially compared to New York. 6 months of those New York winters, terrible. The weather's nicer here. You have spring for 6 months during the winter, and sometimes you get a spring actually during spring. This year has been a spring during spring, hasn't been summer during spring. And besides the weather, of course, there's healthcare. The healthcare system, I believe, is better here. Socialized medicine makes everything very affordable. It's very complicated with health insurance in America, very expensive, and of course the tuition here for your kids. I mean, you can't compare. My daughter, I think I pay. My daughter, she's 3 years old. I pay 470 shekel for a year. That's a little more than $100 for a whole year, and I will be continuing to pay around $100 a year for many years till at least 8th, 9th grade. So that's really good. Even my son eventually will go to a cheder here. I don't think it's more than 470 shekel a month. It's like $100 a month. I don't know how much is that. It's like 10 or 12 months a year. $1,500 a year. I mean, upkes. Of course you make less money here, but I mean, $20,000 tuition in America for a kid. Heartbreaking. It really is. I mean, it really is. It's very sad. If you had to ask me what my opinion is, I would say that in America, I believe the yeshiva system should shut down. I think people should go to public school. All Jewish people should go to public school. Of course, in densely populated Jewish areas, most of their friends will be Jewish, Orthodox people. Public school is free. Remember that. Money does play a huge aspect in your life, and you have to spend wisely. That's the system in America, to make your own schools. I mean, it's like a given. You have to send your kid to yeshiva nowadays, but everyone decided we're going to do it the right way. Why would we pay them money? The government provides education. You provide a couple hours of Jewish education on the side. I mean, the majority of people who go to yeshiva, even the frum ones, those formative years until 18 years old, even in the really frum places, how much motivation does a kid really have to learn a Daf Gemara? They start learning Gemara when they're 18, 20, 22, that's when they really start. So I really feel that, those years are wasted, and spend all that money on providing that education that it basically goes down the garbage and then thrown in the garbage. You're not really accomplishing any of that money. Of course, it's controversial, as I said, but let's get into the Gemara. Let's start today's daf. Give you a little bit of my wisdom before we start. All right. At the bottom line, Gilma base, it says, the Ochlan Betumas Atzma and Loka. We're talking about differences between Truma and Meiser. Today in Ben Sira, I'm going to talk more about a difference between Meiser, Truma, and Kachim. there's an elevated. You have to constantly elevate your status a little more in order to eat these things in the purification process after tuma. We'll discuss why is that. What does Torah have in mind with this purification process? One of the things mentioned is that by truma, by meiser, if the actual fruits, the meiser sheni fruits, are tummy themselves, you get malchus, which is not the case by truma. Truma, you wouldn't get malchus. You only, if you ate it while you were tummy, right? You ate truma while the kohen who's eating the truma himself is tummy. That is pretty severe. That you're chayav misa b'shamayim for. It's even worse than malchus. But if the actual truma is tummy and the kohen is tor, that you wouldn't even get malchus for. Why is that so? It's much from the brisa that you don't get malchus, but it's still aser minat Torah. How do you know that? It says by a bechor is eaten even if someone's tummy. Only the bechor is eaten when the bechor meat is tummy, but something else not. And what is that referring to? It can't be referring to ma'aser sheni because that's a malchus. Must be lavvam kal essay as a status of an essay, meaning it's a isser essay, less chomer than a malchus. You wouldn't get than a los essay. You wouldn't get malchus for it. Must be referring to truma. Truma is something which has the status of an isser essay to eat it when the truma itself is tummy. Amar Ravashi Marisha Nami Shmas Mina. Now we're back to, we haven't really left off the discussion from Ayin Daf Ayin Gimel. We were trying to find out what is the status of an Arel, someone who's uncircumcised eating meiser. So he brings another proof. We're back to bringing more proofs for this. Marisha Nami Shmas Mina. The time of a shire. Originally, the proof started from a brisa where it's discussing the fact that we didn't mention a distinction between truma and meiser in regards to an arel. So it sounds like they're the same and it should be usher. So the Gemara says no. The Gemara rejected that. Really, there are differences. Tana v'shayir, really, meiser could be mutter to an arel. We have another proof that Tana v'shayir. I mean, the Lokasani doesn't say. The Noagin Kaf Ayin Dalam and Aleph Bishar Shnei Shavua Ve'Elhem Pidyon. Vashen came a Meiser. Could have said by Truma and Bikurim that it applies during other. My wife's phone is ringing. You could ignore that. It'll stop in a second. The Noagin Bishar Shnei Shavua Ve'Elhem Pidyon. Vashen came a Meiser. By Truma and Bikurim apply all 7 years of Shemitah. Meiser Sheni only applies in the 3rd and 6th year. Doesn't say that difference. Shows you there are differences, but they're not listed. It's the same thing we could say that an RL would be technically mutter to eat Truma, to eat Meiser, even though Truma would be Aser. So that seems to be a proof. Tashma Nishtayru Bo Tzitzir HaMa'akvan. We're still not done with proving this. Nishtayru Bo Tzitzir HaMa'akvan is Hamila. Reza Eno Ochel. If a person had a Mila, but he has certain strands of the Mila that are still there, he can't eat truma. Lo b'truma, lo b'pesach, lo b'kodshim, lo b'meiser. He can't eat 4 things, right? But what meiser are we talking about? We're allowed meiser dagan. Aren't we talking meiser dagan? Just talking about meiser dagan. We're talking about, which is a reference to meiser sheni, which applies to crops. Lo meiser behema. We're talking about meiser behema, right? When you have animals in your flock, you have to give. You have to give a 10th to the Kohanim. Whereas Meiser Behenu, Hainu Kachim. Meiser Behenu is brought as a korban. So it's Kachim. Mentioned Kachim already in the Brisa. Ulutamayich, Milos Nan Pesach Visani Kachim. What are you trying to say? You can't say it because it's Kachim. We had it says Pesach in there. So we have examples where we're saying Kachim. And we mentioned specific korbanos also. Whereas Bishlam Pesach Kachim Srichi. No, it had to say Pesach and Kachim separately. Why? Itana Pesach, if we just said Pesach, Mishum Ta'arelos with Pesach Siva. The whole concept of an Arel not being eat a Karam Pesach, it's written explicitly by a Karam Pesach, a Kachim, but other types of Kachim, other types of Karbanos. And maybe an Arel could eat Kachim. Itana Kachim, we just said an Arel can't eat Kachim. Havamina, my Kachim Pesach, would have said Kachim must be only a Pesach, because it says by Pesach, an Arel can't eat it. Al Meiser Behema. So you need both. Al Meiser Behema, Lambli, but say Meiser Behema, it's the same thing as Kachim. Ela Meiser Rishon. The Gemara says no. Maybe it's not referring to Meiser Sheni. Maybe it's talking about Meiser Rishon. Meiser Rishon is what you give And from every year of the Shana Shemitah, you give to the Levi. For a Meir, the Amar Meiser Rishon Asher Lazar. Normally Meiser Rishon, right? You give a portion, a tenth of your produce to a Levi, to Levium, right? Normally, most opinions hold that anyone can partake of it, not just the Levi, even the Israel could. But the opinion of this Brisa is Rabbi Meir, who says the Meiser Rishon is Asher Lazar. It's only permitted to eat by a Levi, just like it's only permitted to Asher by a Levi. So therefore, an Arel would be Asher, but that's only according to Rabbi Meir. We don't pass on Rabbi Meir. So therefore, an Arel will be mutter to eat Meiser. Tashma. So you can't bring a proof from that. Tashma. The Tanya Rabbi Chia Bar Rab Difti Arel Asher b'shtei Meisros. He says an Arel is Asher in two types of Meiser. My love Echad Meiser Dakma Echad Meiser Behema. What are the Meisros? One's talking Meiser Sheni, one's talking Meiser Behema. So I says no, Hachanami Meiser Rishon. Really, it's one's with Meiser Behema, one's Meiser Rishon, not Meiser Sheni. Meir, and so Meir, like we said before, that he has an interesting shita. It's Asher Lazarim. Tashma. Only Asher Meiser and Mutter B'Truma of a Paro. And Onain is Asher to eat Meiser, and Onain is Asher to eat Meiser, is Mutter to eat Truma. Only someone who's grieving a dead person, he can't eat Meiser Sheni. He's mutter b'truma. He's mutter truma para, and he's mutter to sprinkle the meichatas on someone to prepare it. Tful yom, someone who went to the mikvah, right, but didn't have hair of shemesh. Azer b'truma, he can't eat truma until says if a mutter a part of a Meiser. He's mutter to eat Meiser Sheni, and he's mutter to sprinkle the meichatas. Mechosra kippurim, someone who has to bring a korban, for example, a zav, tzori, yoledis, these things they have to bring a korban. Also, the para, you can't sprinkle the para water. Para then mutter b'truma meiser, mutter and truma meiser, as long as there was hair of shemesh, tefillah hair of shemesh, mutter and truma meiser. Ima isa, if it's true, nisni ara aser b'truma mutter para meiser. If it's really true that Meiser Sheni is mutter to an aral, it should have said in this price we're talking the differences between truma and Meiser. It should say aral. He can't eat truma, but an aral could sprinkle the paraduma. He could eat Meiser. Meiser the high Tana to be Rabbi Akiva. This Tana is not a proof. It's a specific Tana. Rabbi Akiva the marble la aral to katami. Like we explained, Rabbi Akiva shita is that the fact that a person an aral can't eat truma, he learns that of ishish. Sanya Rabbi Akiva Omer. Ishish Rabos the Arel, he includes the Arel, he calls an Arel a Tameh person. He's not just someone who's, let's say, a Mos, let's say, he's considered someone Tameh. So therefore, he's Tameh, so just like it follows that he's Tameh, so therefore a Tameh person can't eat Truma. But according to Rabbi Eliezer, he wouldn't say an Arel has the din of a Tameh, and therefore he could eat. So that's why this Bryce is Rabbi Akiva, who differentiates. Man Tana the Polyglot the Rabbi Akiva. Who is the Tana that argues on Rabbi Akiva? Tana the Rabbi Yossi Abavli. It's Tana we found in a different brisa, which includes the opinion of Yossi Abavli. The Tanya Sreifas Onin Mechusar Kippurim Kshera. Right? Sreifa, burning the Kapara Duma by an Onin Mechusar Kippurim. Someone who is Mechusar Kippurim, he hasn't brought his korban yet, but he has done Tefillah and Herav Shemesh. Says Kshera, Rabbi Yossi Abavli, Omer owning Kshera, Mechusar Kippurim Psul. Mechusar Kippurim is to burn the paraduma, to have any interaction with the paraduma by Mechusar Kippurim is Psul, but only would be Kshera. So the Tanakama of this brisa held that the same thing, just like a Mechusar Kippurim, which is right a higher level as kshera, so therefore I would also consider it to be an aral kshera kosher. After we said several aral asra meiser. So now we're back to taking sides on this discussion. Yitzchak held an aral is asra meiser. After Yitzchak benan aral asra meiser. Now menem meiser. But never menem pesach. It says the same word for Xera Shava by Karam Pesach and by meiser. Menu ha'amar pesach aral asra bo. Menu ha'amar meiser aral asra bo. So whereas Mufni, it has to be extraneous. At least one of them has to be extraneous. Yilo Mufni, Yikol Mifrach, Malapesach, and Chayim, Allow Mishum, Pikol, and Osir, Tommy. Pesach is more chomer than Meiser Sheni because it's a korban and there's Pigol, they have the wrong intention. No sar, if the meat is left over after the prescribed time for eating, give it Tommy. If you're Tommy, you can't eat it, which doesn't apply And there's severe penalties if you eat it with tummy chayav kares lai afnuye mufni. Then it says no, it is extraneous. My mufni. Where is it extraneous? Amaro am yitzchak tlasam imenu ksiva pesach. There's 3 times it says the word imenu by pesach, karam pesach hadaguf, and one is necessary by the actual karam pesach to tell me that the halacha is you can't cook it you can't cook it completely raw. The lamb chop has to be medium rare. You can't have them completely rare. They have to be medium rare. V'chad l'gzera shava. One is extra for the gzera shava. V'chad l'man da'amar ba kosov litin l'cha ese achar los ese. By nosar, right? If you leave over meat past prescribed time, you don't burn it, right? So therefore, it's a lav, and some opinions hold, even though it's lav shem ma'isi, you chayav malchus for it. So therefore, it said, man, an extra pasuk can tell me that the essay, it's a lav shenitak essay, can be fixed through an essay by burning the nosar. You fix the lav, and you're no longer liable for lashes. I did ksiv nosar, ksiv nami mimenu, and therefore, since that was necessary. So therefore, it actually added the word mimenu in the pasuk of nosar, because that pasuk was needed by nosar to tell you it's lav shenitak essay. So therefore, mimenu comes along with that. It's necessary. So that's the third mimenu. The Manda Amar, where it says Manda Amar litain boker shenin strifaso, the pasuk by nosar is not to lav shenitak essay, just to tell me that I can burn it. I don't burn it on Yom Tov, right? Karam Pesach, you're supposed to eat that night. If you don't leave it over, you leave it to the morning. The next day, the morning is Yom Tov. It's the first day of Pesach. You're not supposed to burn kachim on Pesach. The Gemara Shabbos says you don't burn kachim on Pesach. Some halacha maybe. You have to wait till Chol HaMoed to burn it. I did the cause of ad boker ksiv nami mimenu. So therefore, since that's what the pasuk is talking about, so the mimenu just dragged along with it. So anyway, one of the times of the mimenu is extraneous for the Gezerah Shava. Plus the mimenu ksiv ma'aser. Ma'aser it also says the word mimenu 3 times. Chad legufe. One is to tell me halacha about ma'aser. Ma'aser sheni. V'chad the Rabbi Abba Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan has a teaching that we learned before that he says that even though truma tmeya you're allowed to burn under as fuel for your stove, you're not allowed to do ma'aser sheni. That's nitma. V'chad the Rish Lakish, Davar Rish Lakish, Amar Rav Samaya minayin the ma'aser sheni shnitba shemuta lasucha. If you tell me, how do you know that you're allowed to anoint yourself in the oil, the olive oil that became tamei? One of the things you're misvada, you say I didn't use ma'aser sheni improperly. I didn't anoint a dead person. The mace would nasati alachai. Do me the mace nasati. You are allowed to use it to anoint yourself, not a dead person. And what's something which is applicable both by dead people and live people? You want to use it for both dead and live people. Have omer zusicha. We must be talking about anointing, right? To smooth out or to moisturize the skin. So you want to do it by a dead person, a live person. Dead person, it's also a live person. It's mutter maskal marzushra. How do you know it's coming to allow you to anoint yourself with the oil? Maybe it just allows you to buy likach la'aron tachrichem. The pasuk is talking about selling ma'aser sheni in order to buy a coffin and shrouds for the dead person. Meaning for a dead person you can't do it. For your purpose you could use it to purchase things. Where it says you can't think that. Mimenu sounds like from itself, from the actual thing, not from the money that you get from it. Ravashi Amar Lonasati Dumya de la Chalti. It says Lonasati and la Chalti in the pasuk. They're similar to each other. Mala halan migufa afkan migufa achila is with your body, so too here it's with your body. Akati mufna misarecha. So we found out the menu is extraneous by Karan Pesach. When you have Gzera Shava and you have one side, it's extraneous, so you can learn and you can't retort. That makes sense. According to one who holds the maiden with Shiva, it's only extraneous from one side of the Gzera Shava. You could ask questions. Ma'ikal Meimar, right? We can't make a Gzera Shava because Pesach is more chomer than Ma'aser Sheni. Hach the Rabbi Abba, the Rav Nachman Amar Rabbi Arvahu Nafka. So the Gemara says, no, the teaching of Rabbi Abahu, which was the second teaching, Mimenu by Ma'aser Sheni, that you're allowed to, by Ma'aser Sheni, you can't use it to light under your stove, but you could use it for Truma Tmeya. That we can learn from a different place. Rav Nachman Amar Ravua Nafka, Amar Rav Nachman Amar Ravua Ma'idich Siv Ani Hinei Tzad L'Chayav Shmeres Trumosi. I gave to you my truma, the guarding of my truma. Mashtei trumas akasim medaber. So trumos is plural. Two trumas. Achas trumat mehoro, achas trumat meis, including not just trumat tahoro you're allowed to eat, but also trumat mei you're allowed to benefit from. Can't eat. Amar Rachman lecha shalcha tehela asaka tachas tavshilcha. The pasuk is saying you're supposed to guard it, that it shouldn't become tamei. You're not supposed to eat it when it's tamei. But the pasuk says lecha. It says natati lecha. I gave it for you. So how do you give it for your trumat mei? You can't eat it. So what could you do with it? It comes to include that you could use it as fuel for your fire to light your stove, even though you can't eat it. V'chol etzmeim. Mishnah says, "Oh, etzmeim. Anyone who's tamei can't eat truma." Aminani mili. Amar Yochanan b'Shmuel Yishmael. Amar Kra Ishish b'Zera Aaron Usarua Ozav. Anyone from the family of Aaron, he has saras or he's a zav. Ezu davar sheshaveh. The Zayin talks about kachim. You can't eat kachim. Ezu davar sheshaveh b'zaro. I know it's a reference to truma. B'zaro shel Aaron. What's something that applies equally to all of the family of Aaron? Heavy Omer is truma. Truma applies equally, not just kachim, karbanos, usually only eaten by the males, not by the females. Truma applies, man and woman could eat it equally. But ema b'chazev v'shok. Maybe it's talking about kachim and it's talking about the ribs and the thigh, asabuko, which is eaten by the whole family. The Gemara says it doesn't apply to a woman in certain circumstances. Meaning, when she marries a Kohen and she goes back to her Kohen's family, she was daughter of a Kohen, she marries Yisrael, and then her Yisrael husband dies, she has no children, she goes back to her father's house to eat Truma, but she can't go back to eat the Chazev V'Shok. So when it says Truma Nami, Eina B'Chalala. If the woman, it doesn't apply by all women, if she becomes a Chalala, she's the daughter of a Kohen who marries a Grusha, let's say, she's a Chalala, so she can't eat Truma. Chalala Lav Zara Aaron, the Gemara says, Chalala, she loses her status as kahuna. She's not a part of the kahuna. She's not Zera Aaron. So now the Gemara is going to dissect. There's basic halachas that when you become tamei, and sometimes you're tamei, you have to bring a korban also. You're a zav or matzora, zav gedola, matzora. Yoledis, you have to bring a korban. So there's 3 steps in purifying yourself. First of all, you have to go to the mikvah. Once you go to the mikvah, you can start eating Meiser Sheni. When you have hair of shemesh, when Seiz Chavim comes in, you can start eating truma. And once you bring your korban the next day, then you can eat kachim. So the Gemara says, "Mai dehaya asher yitar ad ika hair of shemesh ema adamaisi kapara." The Gemara is going to get into the discussion about these halachas. So one pasuk says adiyitar, which is about truma. Maybe how do you know it means that you have to wait till Seiz Chavim? Maybe it means that you have to actually bring a korban. This is the pasuk we just talked about tamei. We're talking about truma, and it says ashayitar, right? And so we're talking about. Don't think that we're talking about a zav who only saw 2 emissions, not 3 emissions. If you bring 3 emissions, you have to bring a korban. The Masora, Saras, if he has some of the signs, he's muskar, he's isolated until we can find out if he has all the signs of Saras. As opposed to a mukhlat, someone who has all the signs, and he's locked up, and he has to wait a number of days, and then he has to retire himself and bring a korban. Dumya, the Tami Nefesh. Ma Tami Nefesh, La Bar Kaparahu, Haninami, La Bar Ne Kapara. How do we know it's talking about these types of zav and this type of Masora, not someone who's mukhlat, not a zav bal shalosh riyos? It says Tami Nefesh. Tami Nefesh, someone who comes in kind of with a dead person, right? He doesn't bring a korban. The Emahadi Mili La Bar Kapara, the Bar Kapara, the Maisi Kapara. So maybe this pasuk says when it's only talking about cases where you don't have to bring a korban. But if you do have to bring a korban, you can't eat truma until you bring the korban. V'su, furthermore, hadis not tova va'ola ochel meiser. The Mishnah says once you do tefillah, you can eat meiser sheni. Herav shimsha, when Seiz Chavim comes, ochel b'truma, then you can eat truma. Hevi kapara ochel b'kachim. Once you bring your korban the next day, you can eat kachim. No, and how do you know this halacha? Amarav Chista. Tlasa krai ksiv. The 3 psukim. Ksiv v'lo yochal min hakachim kimrachas b'saro v'mayim. You shouldn't eat from the kachim unless you wash your skin in water. Harachatz tar implies that once you wash it right away, you become tar in some certain regards. And then once the pasuk says the sun will set, and you become tar. And then so you could eat kachim, whatever it's referring to truma. And the 3rd pasuk says the Kohen Mechaper bringing the korban and it should become Torah. So Hakit says it's 3 types of Torah: Kan Meiser, Kan Truma, Kan Kach. The first pasuk is talking about Meiser, eating Meiser. Second pasuk is talking about eating Truma. Third pasuk is talking about eating Kach. Ebachan. Say the opposite. Maybe Truma needs the korban and Kachim's after Harav Shemesh, after Seichel Chavim. Mistabra Truma Adifa, or say Meiser. You flip it around. You can say in any way why Meiser, Truma, Kachim. You can say any order. So where it says Mistabra Truma Adifa. Truma is more chomer than Meiser. Machpaz. It has Misa Chom, Misa Deshamayim Chomesh. If you eat it in Tuma, you're Misa Deshamayim Chomesh. You have to bring Chomesh if you eat it inappropriately, right? Pei stands for Pidyon, I think. What does it stand for? Pidyon, right? Truma, you can't be poda Truma. Zarim, someone who's a foreigner, he's not a Kohen, can't eat it. Other a Meiser Adifa Shken Hadas Tav. Maybe Meiser is more chomer than Truma because you have Hadas Tav, which stands for Havas Machon. You have to bring it to Yerushalayim to eat it. Vido, you have to declare that you're not going to eat it anymore, that you got rid of it. It's Samech is Asr La'onin. It's Asr if you're in Aninas. Tuma, you can't benefit from burning it as fuel underneath your stove. And beer, you have to get rid of it from your house after the 3rd year. You have to eat it during the 3rd year. So maybe Meiser has more chomer. It has even more chomer than Truma. I feel like Misa Adifa. No, Truma is more chomer because you have Misa Deshamayim. If you eat Meiser Sheni in a state of Tuma, you're only Chayav Malchus, not Misa Deshamayim. Rava Amar below Misa Adifa Nami Lamatzaz Amras. Without the proof of Misa Deshamayim, you still can't say that Meiser Sheni would be more chomer than Truma. Amar Kra Nefesh. It says the word Nefesh, soul. Ezu Davar Sheshav B'chol Nefesh. Heavy Omer is at Meiser. It says by the pasuk of it says Nefesh. So that's talking about something which applies to everybody. Meiser Sheni is eaten by Israelim also, not just by Kohanim. So still we have the question, maybe it only applies where you're not chayav a korban. Heicha de bar kapora ademaisi kapora. But when you are chayav a korban, let's say a zav shalosh riyos or metzora muklat or yoledis or things like that, you have to bring a korban. Maybe you can't eat truma until you bring the korban. Amar Abaye trei kraig. See, we don't think that. It's 2 psukim yoledis by a yoledis. See, ad meloski meitara. Kevan Shamali Metara. Once her days are over, she seemingly could eat. Another pasuk says the Kohen has to mechaper by bringing a korban to purify her. Case like the truma called the kachim. So we must resolve this by saying when the days are finished, we have Seichel Chavim comes, she could eat truma. Only when the korban is brought, then you can eat kachim. Eipachana. Say no, that the earlier heter allows kachim, and then truma is the later heter. Mistabra kodesh chomer. Kodesh is more chomer. Shekin pankachas. Pankachas stands for, let's get this over here. You think I'll remember this? Pigul nosar korban mi'ila kares and asar la'onin. These things only apply by kachim and don't apply by truma. Other about truma chamrush ke machpaz misa b'deshamayim chomesh pidyon and zarim hanak nefishin. First of all, there's more chumras by kachim. Rava amar below hanak nefishin lomas zamras amar krav v'chipra aleh akam v'tiera. It says the Kohen is mechaper and by korban and the entire mechlal shehi tmeya. Must be that she's tamei, she's tmeya before he brings the korban. He's not gedayt that bekachim ikri. Ikri kan. If we're talking about the previous pasuk was about kachim. Ikri kan abasar shehiga bechol tamei lo yechal. If she's considered to be, she's still considered tmeya, so it says, and the mita is touched, right? The fact that it says, and that's talking about karbonos, right? So, if really the first pasuk comes to allow, just by going Harav Shemesh allows kachim, right? So the second pasuk says, if it's talking about chipar, it's talking about truma, they're bringing the korban, you allow you to eat truma, but the fact that it's called Batera, she was still tamei before it, she was still tamei. How could she be eating kachim if you're tmeya? If tamei, you can't eat kachim. So it must be truma. Must be that we're talking about the first pasuk about truma, and therefore she's tahora, and therefore the second pasuk about kachim. Hope you enjoyed today's share. We're going to be doing right next the Ayin Vav coming up right now. Ayin Hay coming right now.